when you're building a monster this amazing, you can't get away with these ugly valve covers, and so that's where our favorites, ICT Billet, comes into play to help us make this, this engine look the way it should, so stick around. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and I'm so excited to be hanging the ICT Billet banner in the garage now, officially one of our sponsors. And one of the first things that we're going to cover on is valve covers, because let's face it, the valve covers on modern GM motors with the coils mounted to them are ugly as all get out. So what are we going to do about it? Well, for one, I went out and got a sweet set of old school small block Chevy valve covers. These are going to be the later generation with a non-staggered bolt pattern. Pay attention because there is some earlier ones that have staggered bolt patterns. And then ICT was awesome enough to send me one of their adapter kits that goes in place of your existing valve covers and allows you to bolt an older small block Chevy valve cover on there. They've got multiple different adapters out there. And in fact, they have their own set of billet valve covers that are just gorgeous, but I was kind of wanting to do something with that little retro look and feel to it. What goes along with that though is eventually, not in this video, we're going to go in and do a full coil relocation, get the coils off to the side, run new plug wires over to the spark plugs, all the stuff that is involved, and we've got everything to do that from ICT Billet. So make sure, go down, check them out, click the links. I'm going to put links directly to any of the parts that we see in here. Then of course, in the videos, there's always a link straight to ICTbillet.com. So thanks again to those guys for jumping on board, helping us out, and honestly, just making this motor look the way it should look, because these valve covers are quite possibly the ugliest thing on the face of the planet. Even with the plastic cover on it, it's not worth it. So let's go ahead. We're going to strip down our old MT valve covers, put a fresh layer of paint on that, and while the stripper's working, we'll come in here, break these things down, get all the coils off of them so we can go ahead and get our new adapter brackets installed, which comes with the hardware, studs, the gaskets, the rubber gaskets that go on the bottom side of this. You'll still have to pick up your own small block Chevy gaskets, but those can be had for cheap everywhere, literally everywhere, so stick around. Okay, we've got our valve covers laid out here, and since we don't have a way of sandblasting them, we're going to use aircraft remover, and this is some nasty stuff, be aware. Ventilation, all that stuff. Spray this on a kind of an even coat, making sure that it's got good coverage all the way across, and give it about 20 minutes and you should start seeing the paint bubble up. As I said, it goes on thick, but you want to try and kind of spray it out evenly. Come on, don't clog up. There we go. At this rate, this is going to take a while, so how about I finish this up, because this spray nozzle is not working to save its life. And you join me back whenever we get over to stripping the valve covers down. So it's 20 minutes later. Don't buy this stuff in the aerosol can, man. Get the pail or the bucket of it and brush it on. This crap does not work to save its life. It took so long to get these things completely covered. It's probably about time to strip the first one already. Ugh. Tell you, that was a workout and a half. It just does not want to come out of this can. It's so thick. So just a heads up on that. If you're looking at using some, you know, the aircraft stripper, they sell it in the cans like the pails. Pour it out, you brush it on, just leave it on. It's so much easier to apply it. That's how I've always done it in the past. I just thought this would be nice, clean, and easy. Boy, was I wrong. Okay, while we're waiting on those things to finish stripping, we're going to go ahead and pop all of our coils off. We're going to bag the hardware. We don't really need to, because we're not going to be reusing this hardware. And honestly, you could do this off the engine, but they're right here at a nice height, so why not just take advantage of that, pop all these things out. Now, as far as the coils, you don't need to keep track of which one goes where. They're all the same part number. They all work in different locations, so we're not worried about that. We'll take them off here. Hose them down a little bit, get them kind of cleaned up, get some of the surface dirt off of them, and then get them ready for whenever we swap these over into the remote mount brackets that ICT Billet sent us in another video down the road. As you can see, taking these things off doesn't make these any less ugly. They're just the ugliest valve covers that have ever existed. So even more motivation to go ahead and get rid of these. Something else to be aware of is the ones that we're going over to has a oil fill on one side and a PCV breather on the other side. We'll be putting a PCV valve in on the passenger side head routing that over to our catch can for a couple of reasons. One, we're worried about positive crankcase pressure since we are in a supercharged application with big ring gaps. We're expecting some blow by. We've got to be able to relieve that pressure. The second one is the ICT Billet valley cover does not have provisions, at least the one that we have does not have provisions for a PCV connection on that. So the factory PCV location is going to be gone off of this. It was already gone given that we had swapped over from the factory manifold over to a Holley high ramp. That doesn't mean that you can't effectively scavenge out those vapors by using a catch can, running your breather over to the catch can, and then we've got a line that goes over from the backside of our intake manifold over to the catch can to allow vacuum on it. There's a check valve in there, but we're still going to be running a PCV valve that will have its own check valve that will keep pressure from the manifold from going into the crankcase. Just make sure that you do your research on what you got to do to have that proper scavenging effect on here, because the last thing you want to do is pressure up the crankcase because you'll blow out one of your main seals and just have a constant oil leak. You will literally push oil out of the backside or the front side of the engine. Okay, one of them's been soaking here for a while, and as you can see, the cool stuff about this jazz is literally I'm just using a plastic squeegee here. You can just basically wipe it off. Might have to go back and treat a couple spots again, but we're going to get the majority of it off on the first pass here. And by using a rubber squeegee, we can get a little more aggressive on it to help rub off some of the stubborn paint in spots, because we're not going to hurt anything this way. The fins, you might need to find a brush of some sorts, a soft bristled brush that I can get in there and really work those fins over, but man, these things are going to look good. We'll throw a fresh coat of black paint on them, then wipe the tops of the fins down so we can get a nice look like they had from the factory, but they'll look new, even though these things are older than I am. You know, these are the later generation ones that were made in Taiwan, and so if you are of keen eye, you will notice something very weird. These are one of the misprint sets. There was some misprint sets that got out into the market supposedly due to whenever they changed factories from Japan to Taiwan, and the mold, a couple of the molds got built backwards, and so the slash is actually backwards on this. You know, so a lot of people assume maybe that they were counterfeit, but going back and looking, I believe that they found out that that wasn't necessarily the case. It was just a factory error that really wasn't ever caught because of the language barrier. And, you know, people who were making these didn't know who Mickey Thompson was or what their logo was. They were just casting these valve covers. So if you know anything about it, let me know. I'd be interested to know more. Okay, it took a couple times, but we got one of them stripped down really nice. So we're ready to hit with some paint. I've washed down, scrubbed it some. I'm just going to flat black this thing basically, hit it with some degreaser real quick, then flat black it. I ended up breaking down and going getting a pail of the aircraft remover so I can just slobber it on the other one. It started lifting in some spots, but the paint on it was adhered a lot better than the paint on this head unit or this valve cover. So I'm going to let that one soak while I go ahead and start doing the paint job on this one, getting it ready to go. So the small block Chevy heads are going to use studs, so we're going to have a plate here with a gasket on it. You can see that it's already carved out to match the factory gasket hole. And this one is the other side, I believe. Well, maybe I got it upside down. Nope, I had it upside down. There we go. So it'll go on like so. We've got some recessed holes that are going to go with cap screws down in here. Then we got two studs, and then we'll put two studs up top. And you can use, the kit comes with studs. We're going to use the studs that comes with the kit, but then instead of using the nuts that go on the studs, we're going to use the old school wing bolts, you know, the high-rise wing bolts, so you can easily take the covers off. It's what guys use whenever they're having to do a bunch of lash adjustments, but it gives us kind of the look that we're looking for. So let's go ahead, grab one of our gaskets, get it set up in the back plate here, and then we'll tighten this thing down. When it comes time for the gasket for the plate, just look for the dents up here. That's the quick way to align the gasket in there. This thing will recess down real nicely. That way you don't have to worry about it working its way out. I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bit of Loctite on the 5mm cap bolts that are going to be recessed in here, just to make sure that we don't have any issues with them vibrating loose in the future, and then just get everything run down. After that, we'll come back in. There's different studs. There's long studs for the top ones that are going through the holes, and then there's short studs for the bottom two that are not going through the holes. So just be aware if you're using an adapter plate like this that you may have different length studs. Okay, I've got all these finger tight, and I'm going to work this just like a head. It's not quite as critical because we're using a rubber style gasket, but I want to make sure and get even force distributed to the gasket all the way around. That way we don't have any leaks. And so, you know, start from the middle, work your way out, keep your pressures kind of even as you go through it. And that way, hopefully it'll mitigate any leaking. The nice thing about it is we've got all the cap heads along the bottom side. That's going to help us to kind of maintain that bottom side seal. We're reliant on the studs on the top side, so just keep that in mind whenever you go to put your valve cover on, to try and keep everything nice and evenly distributed so that rubber gasket sits down in there. We'll also be using a rubber gasket for the small block Chevy small block Chevy valve covers instead of the paper style gasket on that side of it, so it should have a little bit better life to it. But we're about ready to button this side up and see how it looks. Well, unfortunately, our wing bolts are not going to work. Our wing nuts are not going to work. I didn't think about the fact that the top studs have to go into the heads, and the heads, of course, are different threads since this is a metric style head, and the small block Chevy is going to be an SAE. So we'll just use the nuts that come with it. Now keep in mind that the top holes on at least the Gen 5s go all the way through, so don't try and run this stud all the way down because it will go all the way through the head. What I did was I just went ahead and ran the bottom ones down, put a little oil on the threads, ran the bottom ones down till they bottomed out, and then backed them off about a quarter of a turn or so, and then made the top ones kind of match that length. And then we've got our gasket here that just pops right on. So now we've got our small block Chevy gasket that goes right over our studs. We'll drop the valve cover on top of that, tighten everything down, and man, this thing's going to be awesome. Well, it's looking pretty good. Granted, this is the passenger side valve cover, and I need to come back in and sand down the chrome parts, but we got to let the paint cure a little bit more than that. I still got a lot of work left to do, so I want to go ahead and wrap up this video, give you an idea of what the finished product was going to look like. And man, maybe I can throw a picture up here in the corner of the before and after, because man, this thing looks good. I'm not gonna lie, this is just probably the most cosmetic appealing thing that you can do to these modern engine bays, is get rid of those ugly valve covers. So once again, huge shout out to our sponsors, ICT Billet, for hooking us up with this kit. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure and subscribe, because we're going to go into the coil relocation, doing all of that stuff. We're going to be tying in a Lingenfelter 2-step while we're doing the coil relocation, so you don't want to miss out on getting all of this buttoned up back in the Super Auto, running, tuned, and making some serious horsepower. But that being said, you guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning.